case, you will have 20 minutes to make your presentation in front of the judge. If your presentation lasts under 18 minutes, you will receive 1 point penalty for every 20 seconds. If your presentation lasts under 15 minutes, your team will receive a score of 0 at the general rating for this case. If after 20 minutes you have not completed this presentation, you will be stopped to move onto the period of question. At the end of the presentation, the judge will have 5 minutes to ask their question. I remind the jury that it is mandatory to ask a minimum of 1 question during this period. If after 5 minutes you have not finished answering the question, you will be stopped. The presentation, I will indicate the remaining time using cardboard at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. I will make a countdown using my finger for the last 10 seconds. I remind you that it is prohibited to say the name of your university, and you will receive a penalty. I also remind the public that it is prohibited to use an electronic device during the presentation, and that the public must stay quiet until the end of the period of question. Before we begin, I'm asking the room to turn off their cell phone and put them on mute so that we do interrupt their presentation. I will now ask the judge to present himself, and after you will be free to start your presentation.
Charles Berrybo, full-time lecturer at HEC Montréal.
Lucie Rodriguez, National Director for Talent at Metro.
Hi, my name is Caroline Pintal. I'm a Talent and Diversity Advisor at Bombardier.
Marie Fernet, Cascade, CHR.
Virginie Bronson, VP HR, Cascade.
Karen Jobin, vice-présidente ressources humaines, Cascade.
Emmanuel Mignot, de GRH, secteur GPS de Cascade.
Il y a 2 ans, ma famille et moi, on a déménagé de ma maison d'enfance. Et j'ai découvert qu'un déménagement, ça prend beaucoup d'efforts, d'un niveau physique, mais aussi émotionnel. Mais toute la famille ensemble, avec les grands-parents, les matantes, les mononcles, on a passé à travers tous ensemble grâce à ce sentiment de communauté. Vous, Cascade, vous êtes une entreprise familiale depuis le début. Et on veut vraiment pousser ceci à travers vos employés et toute la communauté. Bon matin, mon nom c'est Alexandra, je suis ici avec mes collègues Patrick et Stéphanie et aujourd'hui, nous allons vous présenter une stratégie de ressources humaines pour Cascade. Je vais maintenant continuer la présentation en anglais, mais vous pouvez toujours demander des questions en français vers la fin. So the reason why we are here today is to establish an action plan to address the challenges facing Cascades in the coming years. We will be doing this by addressing 3 key questions. The first one being, how can you restore employee engagement and retain your current employees? Next, we're going to look into how you can respond to labor shortages for operations positions. And finally, we will look into how you can ensure that your current workers will have the skills necessary for the jobs of tomorrow. I'm now going to pass it off to my colleague Patrick to go into an analysis.
Thank you, Alex. So let's take a look at your current situation. Well, first of all, you have a strong employer branding in Quebec. You are modernizing your equipment right now, and that requires you to modernize the tasks that employees are doing as well. And right now, you just received your employee engagement scores, and they're below average. So where you need to be is you need to have brand recognition across all of your locations, so not just in Quebec, but in the wider markets. You need to have a highly trained workforce that's going to be working with this new equipment. And then you need to make sure that you are an industry leader in recognition culture. And the obstacles that stand in your way here are, there's a bit of stigma around these operations positions where that's going to be something you'll have to overcome. There's also the profit sharing inequalities. There's certain regions where just based off of the deals that are available to from vendors, you're having these inequalities in profits, and the employees are therefore being challenged by that. And then you also have an industry where most of your employees are generalists, and so they are able to move between different organizations very easily. So these are the issues that we want to address going forward. So Cascade must adapt its profit sharing to factors that are only of employee control. So if you're trying to align all these employees to your organization's goals, it's important to make sure that the profit sharing that you have with them aligns with that. So let's take a look at new Cascaders. Well, what you're looking for is you're looking for people who have these skilled, who are skilled in IT and data analysis, because these are the skills that you need for that new equipment that you're putting in place. And you're also looking for people who fit with the Cascade values. The values are very, very important to you, and you want to make sure that those are maintained throughout your organization. And finally, you're looking for people who are coming from this new generation. You want to make sure that they have the necessary skills, and people fresh out of university are usually the people who will have those skills. So what do they care about? Well, there's three major categories of things that they'll be looking for in an employee. The first one is the nature of their work. They really care about the tasks that they're going to be doing, and they want interesting work. They also care about compensation, and they're willing to move between employers based on that. And finally, culture. They want a place where they feel valued, they want a place where they fit. So it's important to take those three factors into account. Now, looking specifically at rural employees, you said you had some trouble with those. So what you have to do is you have to incentivize them to move to these rural locations. But some of the challenges that they're going to have to overcome is that it's harder to settle here than in urban areas, just because it's harder to satisfy the needs that you'll have in terms of making sure that you can settle properly into the community. These locations are also potentially less profitable, just based on the deals that you can get from vendors, and therefore will affect the profit sharing model. And also, there's also more of a cultural divide, and this is of specific concern when you're looking at immigrant workers. So Cascade must adapt its approach to the changing needs of its employees. Now let's take a look at that employee engagement survey that you received. The results were not what you had expected, and they've been declining in a few areas. But let's group it and look at it based on your values. Now, in terms of communication, initiative, and autonomy, those are three of your values. We tied this to employee empowerment and influence, and you can see that this is not one of the items that you highlighted as a major concern, but it's still important because it touches those three items, and it's a relatively low score, and it also took a significant dip. In terms of adaptability, this is learning and development, and this is something you're working on. So the score there, we hope to improve based on the learning and training that you're looking to implement. In terms of the teamwork, your cooperation is one of your higher scores. So this is an area where that doesn't need to be addressed right away, but should be looked at going forward. And finally, in terms of respect, recognition and salary were the two areas that we felt highlighted this, and those were your lowest scoring points and some of the biggest drops that you took. So it's important to make sure that your employees have a voice within the organization and that they feel that they're heard and they have influence within the organization on top of that recognition and that salary that you already addressed. Now, in terms of some of the alternatives that we can look at here, we decided to base it on looking at what you should focus your energy on in terms of the three things that people really care about these days. So the first one was changing the nature of the work. So this is making more attractive jobs that will be able to get more employees for you in those difficult to fill positions. But the thing that's hard here is if you were looking to split those day and night shifts or offer more accommodation in different areas, it might be harder to fill those night shifts. And you'll also, right now, your employees, based off of that survey, the highest component was the task survey. So they're relatively satisfied with the tasks they're doing. So this is not necessarily what you want to focus on at this point. Next, looking at the compensation, salary was the lowest rated point. And so this might be something you want to address. But you already have a base rate above the industry, so adding on to that wouldn't necessarily make that much of an impact. And you want to make sure that you're not losing that alignment to the company goals. You want to make sure that all employees are working towards those goals and they're all in it together. Finally, looking at the culture. This is really about engagement, making sure that employees have a stronger sense of belonging and that this will actually push all of these other items because you'll have better ambassadors for recruitment, and that they will be able to help make your company a greater company overall. But the thing that focusing solely on culture neglects the other 2 issues. So those 2 issues are still important, but the focus should be on culture. So now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Alex, who's going to go into our recommendations.
Thank you, Patrick. So now if we go back to that sense of family. Really, Cascades, you started as a 3-brother business, and we want you to continue to push that sense of family within the culture, that sense of community. So we're very excited to present to you today our recommendation, which is Cascade Cares. So this is a recommendation that will really prepare you for the future through engagement, recruitment, and training solutions. This approach will be 3-pronged. The first being recover. This is where you're going to be attracting candidates for these operational positions. Next, package. This is where you're going to be restoring that engagement amongst your employees and retaining them. And finally, through absorb, ensuring successful implementation of tech training for your employees. So now if we dive a little bit deeper into this implementation, what is it going to look like at a glance? So for the first stage, which is recover, which is really focused on attracting. This is where we're going to be looking at creating a recruitment campaign to make it present you as an employer of choice. Next, we will be reworking the job descriptions, and finally, implementing a referral program. The key performance indicators here will be to reduce the time to hire by 20%. Next, when we look at the packaging phase, which is where we're really focusing on that engagement of your employees, we will be implementing some data collection, also addressing the compensations you currently offer and the benefits, and finally, having recognition tactics to really make your employees feel recognized and valued for the work that they do. And the key performance indicator here would be the Employee Net Promoter Score. This is on a scale of -100 to +100, and usually a score of about 50 is outstanding. So we were really aiming for that 40 that we think could do you justice. And finally, in the absorb phase, which is really about training and making sure your employees are absorbing all that information. This is where we're going to be having some change leaders and change champions to make sure that the training will be properly implemented. And finally, focusing on employee advancement as well. And the key performance indicator here will be 80% of the plant employees being trained in 2 years. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into recover, the first phase. Well, what is this phase? It's really about attracting those candidates for the operational positions. Now, if we look at the Employer of Choice campaign, we really want everyone who comes across these job opportunities to feel compelled, to feel like they belong at Cascades, because we want you to get the best possible applicants. And so this would be where we would have a campaign that really focuses on those 7 skills that you've mentioned that your operational workers need to have, but really showing them in a more creative way where it makes them feel very compelled. So for example, analytical capabilities was one of those skills that they needed to have. Well, asking them, are you someone who always questioned everything when you were young, who never took yes for an answer and just really analyzed a lot of things? So making them feel like that's something that they did, and that's something who they were. And so going further into that, they'll then look at all these job opportunities. We also want this campaign to involve your ambassadors and really grow that ambassador program. And finally, a Cascade community chest, which my colleague Steph will go into a little bit later. If we look at the job descriptions, we really want to make sure that we are analyzing the current job descriptions to make sure that they have the best possible language to attract those new candidates. So really focusing on making sure it's inclusive to all and putting an emphasis on the technology and the new equipment coming in the future, as we know that's something that Cascade will need to address. And again, promoting those 7 skills that we will have promoted in a more creative way. And finally, promoting these openings on social media, because a lot of these operational, these candidates are on Facebook, for example, and that's a great place to go and find people in their downtime. And finally, the referral program. This is where we will be offering $1,000 for a referral for an employee who stays on board at Cascades for 6 months. And we expect 10% of new hires to be from this program. I'm now going to pass it off to Stephanie to go into the packaging phase.
Thank you, Alex. So looking at the packaging phase, which is really about restoring engagement among employees and also retaining them. So it starts off with data collection. I come from an Italian family, and my dad used to tell me that I could never have enough of 2 things. First being knowledge, second being spaghetti. But he was actually right about the first, in that the more knowledge you acquire, the more data that you gather, the more insights you receive about how you can better equip your employees to excel at their jobs. So this begins with quarterly engagement pulse surveys. These are usually very fast. They take under 5 minutes to complete, and they can give you a good idea of the engagement going on within your company quarter to quarter. Next, we move on to bi-weekly one-on-ones with managers. This is an opportunity to really foster a collaborative culture between your employees and their managers. It's also a very good opportunity to take advantage of the open door policy you guys have. A lot of times when employees will feel grievances or grievances with certain situations, they'll tend to repress those feelings. So by having your managers take the first step and reaching out to them and checking in with them bi-weekly will go a long, long way in their performance to come. And lastly, we have exit and stay surveys. So these are surveys that you will be conducting when an employee leaves the company, as well as when they've been at your company for quite some time, to really get an idea of why they've gone in such different directions. Looking at compensation and benefits, so this is about, as my colleague Patrick mentioned earlier in the analysis, equalizing the compensation opportunities by striving for profitable order equity. So some plants are given more profitable orders than other plants, so really striving to equalize the profitable order among these plants to give your employees an equal chance to make a profit is very important for motivating them. Also, including the trainings considered in their pay raises, so the amount of trainings that they're engaging in and taking will also go a long way, as well as affiliating with local daycare. So a lot of your plant employees are middle-aged employees, so this can be a fast and relatively cheap way to take some stress off their shoulders by reserving 10 or 15 spots in local daycares and urban centers so that they know that they have a place for their child when they go to work. And last but not least, recognition. So this is sending out personalized thank you cards. We know that whenever an organization is missing some employees, other employees will have to step up to compensate. So it might seem trivial, but sending out personalized thank you cards for employees for really putting in their all, covering those extra shifts can go a long, long way. Also ensuring managers are drivers of recognition culture by striving for a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative feedback. Looking at the absorb phase. So this is ensuring successful implementation of tech training for your employees. So we recommend that your training center start designing a tech training program, but just like any huge organizational change, there needs to be a strategic change management plan instilled when going about this. So the goal of this is to really change the mindset of your plant employees when they hear about this automation from fearful to excitement. And this begins by creating change leaders. So this is ensuring managers become advocates for the change by briefing them well in advance, by giving them time to reach out and ask questions and voicing their concerns, by compensating them for the extra workload they'll have to take on, as well as creating a support network around them. By doing this, we hope to strive for a 70% promotion rate among management. So this is 70% of managers will be actively promoting this coming training to their employees going forward. Next, creating change champions. So this is within your actual employee base at your plants. And this is allowing and identifying enthusiastic employees to become mentors and advocates of training, to spread the excitement across all cascaders. And the KPI for this will be 15% of cascaders to become change champions. So they're there in every organization. It's just a matter of finding them, identifying them, and then equipping them with the tools to spread what they're excited about to the rest of your employee base. And last but not least, we have employee advancement. So this is around 2 hours a month allocated to cascaders to really work on acquiring knowledge or skill in an area that at Cascade that excites them. So you have this great training center with a bunch of training programs, and we said, hey, why not allow your employees to take advantage of it? So this is just giving them 2 hours a month to spend some time improving themselves to then translate that into your company. And by doing this, you'd oversee a 50% usage rate of this tool. So diving into corporate social responsibility. For this, we have the Cascade Community Chest and the Cascade Change Makers. For the Cascade Community Chest, we thought that it would be a great initiative to have Cascade buy back used commodities, to then give to employees and members of the community that are in need. And this can also facilitate with transitioning into rural areas. If some of your employees might not have the funds needed to relocate into rural communities, so to have this community chest where they can go and receive used items that will help them with this move can be a great resource to have. We can delve more into the Cascade Changemakers in the Q&A, as well as the schedule, and I'll pass it off to Patty to talk about what you can do tomorrow.
Thank you very much. So in terms of what you can do tomorrow, we really think you should start off by sending those personalized cards. You really want to acknowledge the work that your employees are putting in and say thank you for it. And then after that, make sure that you're installing those feedback paths. So making sure that employees have a way to communicate with management about how they're feeling and getting those pulse surveys. Also reworking the job descriptions and implementing the referral program. Now, in terms of the financials, the overall cost of this program is broken down over here, and it roughly breaks down to $45 per employee or $5,000 per operational unit. We can go further into this in the Q&A at the end. In terms of the risks and mitigation, well, we have, here are some of the issues that you might face in this program and how we hope that you can mitigate them going forward. So the first one is that cultural differences arise between these immigrant workers moving to these rural areas. So here we make sure that managers have undergone cultural awareness training and that employees are also undergoing this training if these kinds of problems arise, and make sure that there's that kind of communication between the managers and the workers. Next, experienced cascaders are reluctant to receive training. So this is where we are conducting those one-on-ones to make sure that managers can understand why they're having trouble with this and that they're exposed to the benefits by the change champions. And then also the employer choice campaign, making sure that if it has less reach than predicted, what we would do is we would increase the media plan. I'm now going to pass it off to Alex to finish this off.
Thank you very much, Patrick. So, as a reminder to why we were here today to establish an action plan to address the challenges facing Cascades in the coming years. We did this by addressing 3 key questions about, first of all, your employee engagement, next, your labor shortages, and finally, how you can ensure that your workers will have the knowledge they need for the jobs of tomorrow. And our recommendation was Cascades Cares. And we know that you care about your employees, but we want to make sure that your employees really know that as well. So we thank you very much for your time, and we now open the floor to questions.
Well, maybe a tactical question. You talked about the $1,000 referral program. How did you arrive at that amount, and how do you feel that it is sufficient to incentivize an employee to refer a friend or refer a colleague?
So we have done some research in the past and found that $1,000 is a quite common referral bonus to get if you do refer someone. However, we did think that definitely if we're looking at production employees, this could really be something to incentivize them to refer a friend. In the corporate offices, maybe looking at increasing it a little bit more depending on what their salaries currently are and such. But for the production employees, we really do believe that that's a solid amount to make sure that they bring in their friends and like-minded people to the company.
Okay, thank you.
Vous avez mentionné d'utiliser la formation Reskilled Employee. Est-ce qu'avec le marché du travail d'aujourd'hui et les changements technologiques qui se produisent à une vitesse grand V, vous avez une idée de quel devrait être le niveau de scolarité minimale qu'on devrait exiger dans nos lors de recrutement?
Alors, pour ça, je dirais, le niveau de scolarité, c'est comment...
You can answer it.
Sorry. So in terms of the level of education that employees should have, so currently you have them have a high school or a trade school diploma, and we think that this is a good level of education to have because they are going into this area. but we would say that it really needs to be balanced out by the training. So definitely looking at other areas and making sure you have those high skilled workers, but making sure that you have a training program that can provide the knowledge necessary to fulfill the tasks that they're mandated by law.
Thank you.
Which insight are you going to get different from the engagement survey versus the stay interviews?
Sorry, can you repeat versus the sting interviews?
Yes,
stay interviews.
you mentioned in the, it's in the package, you mentioned that in terms of data collection, you're recommending that we do quarterly engagement surveys.
Right.
But you're also recommending that we implement stay surveys as well. What kind of insight that will be different that you're going to recommend us to get from either or?
So the engagement surveys are really going to be, tend to be a pulse survey, so something that could be completed rather fast. And I forgot to mention, that's my bad, but we suggested maybe implementing a couple iPads in each plant for workers to complete on the spot. So the information that you're getting, while relevant, is very compacted and minimal. While stay surveys would be an extended survey where you'd be able to gather a lot more information and insight as to why a fellow cascadier has remained loyal to our company for so long.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
You recommend different solutions to attract people in our rural facilities. Did you think about something special to address the second career, the partner that you are with that would be willing to move or not with you, since it's difficult to find a job for yourself?
So definitely depending on the applicant situation, we know not everyone might be in this position, but if someone is coming with a family member or even their children, that daycare affiliation could really be a great benefit for the children. And for the partner, that's something that I think would be great to discuss in the interview process, but there's always options to potentially offer some sort of extra compensation if it's someone you really want to have on your team, because it's never going to be a missed opportunity to invest more in your employees, especially if they're worth coming onto the team and you really want to have that person come even though they have a significant other who maybe weren't elected.
You would offer a higher salary to someone who has a partner compared to someone else that doesn't have any partner?
No, not necessarily a higher salary, just maybe some form of compensation to help the partner in the transition process. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
Can you go back to the financials slide and explain us your numbers? Where those come from?
So in terms of updating the job descriptions there, that's really the extra workload that's being placed on the HR department, and so it's being split between that. In terms of the referral program, we assess that based on the current rate of positions that you need to fill, and then based off the referral program there, and the numbers have been rounded. In terms of data collection, that is the cost of implementing the iPads in the different work centers, and then the cost associated with analyzing the data. The training is based off your number of employees, and then just a cost of training attributed to that. The social media campaign based off of actually creating content, and then making sure that it's in front of the people that you want to attract. The employee grants, that's really looking at our CSR initiatives, and then the daycare spots is making sure that you're able to subsidize and make sure that there are those reserved spots in place.
Thanks.
It's the end of the
Thank you.
Good job.
Félicitations. Oui.
Tu remplir ça tout de suite?
Oui, c'est juste les notes. Je te dirais d'attendre parce que dépendamment des autres compagnies, les autres, c'est ça. Moi, je t'attends qu'ils sortent tous. Quand je sais que t'étais dans le fond, c'était des gens de l'école.